Hello and welcome to St James English Revision. Today's lesson we're going to be looking at Language Paper 1. I hope you find this useful and I'm excited to take you on your revision journey. First of all, we're going to begin with some myths about Language Paper 1. The first myth, and you'll be surprised that this continuously happening, is that you must analyse in question 1. No, in question 1, please just write in full simple sentences where you get the information from the section of the extract. The idea of also the more you write, the better you do. I see this particularly for question 5, where students can write like 5 or 10 pages. But unfortunately, there is no arc, there is no thread, there is no consistency. It is better to write 5 phenomenal paragraphs for Language Paper 1, question 5. And this also makes sense for Language Paper 2, question 5, where it's really well crafted, makes sense, and has a definite arc to it. And you cannot use the same quotes more than once. If you find yourself using a fantastic quote in question 2 and the same fantastic quote in question 4, that is actually you being really clever. I want you to remember that the examiner will just see questions, they will not see your full paper. So therefore there is no way you'll be reprimanded for doing this. If anything, that's working smarter rather than harder in the exam. Now here are my big truths. Always read the questions before the extract. Particularly question 4 will give you an indication for what is going to happen in the extract. For instance, someone will feel scared, or there'll be empathy or sympathy needed, or they will feel angry. This gives you some sort of hint that will help your reading of the extract. Annotate as you read to save time, particularly for question 3, where you're looking at the opening of the text, how the writer hooks you in, and any shifts in the ending and the entire narrative arc. It is helpful for you to be using your reading time, which you'll have about 10 minutes to do, to actively prep. And just to remind you that question 4 has a little bit of everything, some analysis, some evaluation. You can analyse obviously language, but also I do think it's important to analyse a little bit of the structure as well, especially when you're pushing for those higher grades. For this, please have the Life of Pi extract, which you have been looking at in your form time revision sessions and your form time intervention sessions as well. Our focus today is going to be actually on question 2, and this is your language analysis. And I've really bolded this for you to really understand that this is all about that language analysis, and for us really digging deep and going really into depth with that wonderful language analysis. Right, we're going to look at question 2. Now, first of all, with question 2, as it says here, it gives you from line 13 to 25. It will also reprint that tiny section for you, okay? Now, the first thing I want you to do is to remember that you have to use the section that they mention. If you go out of that section, you will not be able to gain any extra marks. You're not losing marks, but you're not gaining anything. So in essence, you kind of are losing. And that's really important to remember. Everything you do in this time needs to be about gaining rather than losing in any way. Now, it says the question here is, how does the writer use language to describe the narrator's fright and confusion? This is, I would call it our most straightforward of our questions. It then says you can include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. Now, the final one, sentence forms, is often the area where students find it a little bit tricky. In these videos, I'll be showing you how to use sentence forms incredibly well. Right, let me quickly read this section of the text. It says, where were the officers and the crew? What were they doing? Towards the bow, I saw some men running in the gloom. I thought I saw some animals too, but I dismissed the sight as an illusion crafted by rain and shadow. We had to hatch covers over the bay pulled open when the weather was good, but at all times the animals were kept confined to their cages. These were dangerous wild animals we were transporting, not farm livestock. Above me on the bridge, I thought I heard some men shouting. The ship shook and there was the sound, the monstrous metallic burp. What was it? Was it the collective screams of humans and animals protesting their oncoming death? Was it the ship itself giving up on the ghost? I fell over. I got up on my feet. I looked overboard again. The sea was rising. The waves were getting closer. We were sinking fast. I clearly heard monkeys shrieking. Something was shaking the deck. The Goran Indian wild oaks exploded out of the rain and thundered by me, terrified out of control, berserk. I looked at it, dumbstruck and amazed. Who in God's name had let it out? Now we're going to go really into depth. first of all, for this, remember it is only an 8 marker, so you're going to spend no longer than 10 minutes on it and about 2 paragraphs. I say, first of all, get 3 quotations, okay? If you want to go for 4, get 4, but I'd rather you do 3 incredibly well than 4 and it's not as detailed as it can be. I say keep them short and juicy. Take a minute for me, off you go. Okay, so the first quotation I'm actually going to look at is what were they doing, okay? And there is a plethora of questions in this extract, so you can actually mention the fact that the writer really utilises a lot of questions to convey that anxiety, that fear, and to really illustrate it very, very carefully. Now, I'm just going to show you the notes that I've made. I've said here that the use of a question conveys his perplexed state. I've said as the narrator is also the protagonist, meaning that we garner even more sympathy for him. We feel nervous for him because it's like he's discussing it with us. We also become part of the fear because we begin to question too. Because the narrator is also our protagonist, we are experiencing these accidents and these incidents through his perspective, meaning we not only question it, but we are kind of at his will to try and understand what is going on. I would also look at the collective pronoun they. We feel a sense of his loneliness and wonder. They are all together whilst he is alone and unsure. And then I'm going to look at this where it says what were being past tense and retrospective. And I'm going to ask you, does this comfort us or cause more fear? And possibly there's a bit of both there, where we know that this has happened in the past, but we're also fearful what's going to happen within this section of the text. The next quotation I'm going to look at is monstrous metallic bub. I love this quotation. I really hope that you chose this quotation too. Now, even if you didn't, I'm going to show you what I have done with it. I just want you to first of all remember that this is a description of the ship and the sound it makes. But we have to link it back to the question. And the question is all about the narrator's fright and confusion. So I always have that in the back of my mind. Now, I've talked about the alliteration of monstrous metallic, and it allows the magnitude of the ship's sound and also its size to be magnified. Monstrous helps to convey the fear that has been incited in the speaker, the narrator here, because he sees this as a monster, showing him as almost a bit of a victim in this moment. Now, I love the ending, the burp. It's the use of personification there, burp, but it conveys the almost relaxed, lackadaisical state of the ship, and it has significantly more power to the frightened, frantic state of the narrator, allowing us once again to delve into his inner psyche and to see how he feels. Terrified, out of control, berserk. Now, this is my final quotation. First of all, we remember it's a tricolon. Terrified, 1. Out of control, 2. Berserk. That's 3, so it's a tricolon. I've noticed that with each word that kind of will phrase there, because out of control is a phrase, it increases in the intensity. Now, this is a description of the ox. So it's actually a description of the animal, but I said it also correlates with the narrator's emotional state. Whilst the ox is terrified, out of control, and feeling berserk, to an extent so is he. So you may say that it kind of represents his own emotional psyche. Now, terrified and berserk are technically antonyms, meaning they're not synonyms of each other. They're quite different. Terrified equals scared, while berserk equals angry. But maybe what it's showing is this kind of perplexed state he's in, and it shows that there is a connection between anger and fear. I've looked at out of control being in the middle of the tricolon. It almost breaks up the rhythm because we have these individual words, then we have a phrase, and it's possibly maybe hinting at his disconnected mind. Now, I'm going to look at the point, and the first thing is that you need to answer the question with specificity. So the writer shows fears and anxiety. This is a fear and anxiety to this question. The question let's remind is, how does the writer use language to describe the narrator's fear and confusion? You may say to me, well, Miss, actually, that is a good point. You're answering the question. You kind of are, but there is no specificity there, and I think specificity is what supports you getting the 7 and 8 and the full marks, okay? But here I've got a different one. I've said the writer shows fear and anxiety through the use of questions to represent his perplexed state. So you're telling me what the writer is doing and why they are doing it. So you're already starting to get interpretation hinting in there. And that should be able to help you really strengthen your point. But I want you to remember that this is actually all about that analysis, sweeties. Okay, it's all about that analysis. So, yes, I want your points to be nice and clear because it supports the base of your analysis. But what you need to be doing is remembering this is an 8 marker. You're going to spend 10 minutes. You have a minimum of 2 paragraphs. We get those modality, those tentative pieces of language. This could suggest another interpretation is furthermore. Perhaps this could be the writer hinting at. Additionally, this may be. Sprinkle in that tentative language. Now, why don't you have a go of writing this up? And I hope you enjoyed our first video. Off we go.